As tensions between Kosovo and Serbia continue to rumble on, I decided to get the perspective of Tanya Domi. She's a professor at the Harriman Institute at Columbia University in the United States, and she specializes in international and public affairs with a speciality in human rights in the Western Balkans, post-conflict development, and conflict-related sexual violence. Tanya, welcome to Inside Albania. It's a pleasure that we are finally getting a chance to do this together after quite a lot of backwards and forwards over the last few months.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to join you today on this show. And given that my grandmother was born in Albania, she would have been amazed, I think.
So what I want to talk about first, I want to dive in first. You told me that you have just come back from a trip to Israel. You were there with Vasifia Krasniqi to look at the way that sexual violence and rape has been used in the ongoing conflict there. If I understand correctly, can you give me a bit of information about your trip and what exactly it was that you were doing there?
Yes, I joined Vasifia Krasniqi Goodman, who is a Kosovo-American and a survivor of the 99 war in Kosovo with Serbia. She was recently appointed as a presidential envoy on conflict-related sexual violence by President Osmani of Kosovo, which I think was indeed a brilliant and a major leadership initiative that actually yielded to this first trip by Vasifia. And I am also a member of her board, and which is called the NGO, which is called Vasifia's Initiative. Mm-hmm. So we were supported by the Kosovo government in going to Israel, and Israel extended an invitation to Vasifia and myself to come and engage in a fact-finding mission on the events that took place on October 7th, specifically for both of us on conflict-related sexual violence that took place in Israel. And I'm a scholar in that area at Columbia University.
Tanya, are you able to explain or give any more information on what you found out during this trip?
Yes, I can. We had very high access. We met with members of the Knesset. We also met with General Hirsch, who now reports to the War Cabinet. And we also went around the country. We went to locations in southern Israel that were attacked on October 7th. And there has been an initial report issued by the Israeli Physicians for Human Rights. And let me just get right to it. What we discovered on sexual violence that took place by Hamas on attacks on Israeli women is something I have not seen very much in my career. Mm-hmm. And it is a level of violence and brutality that is very atypical, in that what we found was that almost all the women that were raped were murdered. Ultimately, they were murdered. There were very few survivors. And let me also say this. We are talking about not only rape, we are talking about acts of dismemberment, removing women's breasts while they were alive. We are talking about using knives, pushing them into their vaginas, shooting women in their vaginas with guns, and also burning them alive and dismembering them, including beheading them. It is so beyond the level of brutality that even I am shocked. And every time I have this experience of reviewing what has happened in X country around the world, it's always very heartbreaking, but I can honestly say this should shock the conscience of everyone, that this is beyond the pale. And it's very clear it was systematic because it was carried out throughout Israel. Wherever Hamas attacked, they went directly at attacking the women and they murdered them. And so in the case of Bosnia, I'm just going to say, in order for Israel to bring any successful cases here, they cannot do it under existing Israeli law right now because they don't have any DNA, because the people were buried quickly in accordance with Jewish burial rituals. And so this is where Bosnia does have a reference for Israel. And I spoke about this with members of the Knesset as well. But in the case of Bosnia, to get some cases before the International War Crimes Tribunal for former Yugoslavia, bodies had to be exhumed. And I do think ultimately this will have to happen if there's going to be cases brought with DNA, even at an international tribunal. And I also feel that it's very obvious right now that because of the Ukraine situation and that the International Criminal Court and the prosecutors in Ukraine have identified, well over 100,000 crimes, it's going to be very difficult to get these cases in Israel before an international forum, but they should try. And there are lawyers that are filing complaints now with the ICC and asking for queries on this. But I can honestly say, and that we can also anticipate Pramila Patton's report, who is the Undersecretary General for Conflict-Related Sexual Violence, who carried out went to Israel and carried out a query, went around the country, met with people, talked to people, and included leaving 7 or 8 staff behind to follow up on getting further information. That report will be released to the Secretary General, and we can anticipate that will happen probably sometime in June. But time is of the essence, and there's going to have to be some decisions made about how they're going to pursue accountability. It's a very big challenge. They're going to have to match perpetrators with specific crimes. There are eyewitnesses, and eyewitnesses that were indicated in the Israeli Physicians for Human Rights report that Hamas fighters, they could see them in the festival area where I did go, that they were knifing women to death and laughing while they were knifing them. I therefore have concluded that probably many of these Hamas fighters were probably drug induced. They were probably under the influence of some kind of drugs. But it was consistent throughout every area attacked that the women were brutalized.
It was a weapon.
In fashion. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely brutalized. You don't want to make comparisons, but this did not happen really in Kosovo or Bosnia at this level. I mean, we're talking about dismembering bodies.
And this is horrific because, since the conflict has been ongoing between these two countries, we have reports of IDF using sexual violence as well against Palestinians previously, but this seems like it was a completely different beast. It was used as a method, a tactic, rather than something that just takes place during the course of a war.
That's right. It was systematic. It was planned. And the IDF actually has a theory, and I think it's a plausible one, that Iran perhaps trained these Hamas fighters. And we know that Iranian women have been repeatedly raped and in prison in Iran, and the resistance in Iran has really been by women. I mean, intermittently over the years, but we obviously don't know everything about Iran, but it's a brutal regime, and it never hesitates to use torture. And rape, of course, is torture, but what is amplified in this brutality is made clear. It's beyond the pale.